Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. The contract hit the marble floor with a sound that was deafening in the silence, sharper than the slap Cashin had just delivered to my heart. You thought this was love? Cashin's voice wasn't just cold. It was absolute zero, stripping the oxygen from the penthouse suite. He didn't look at me, his gaze fixed on the skyline of the city he owned. A glass of amber whiskey held loosely in a hand that had caressed my cheek only hours ago. Look at the papers, Julian. You aren't my partner. You aren't my lover. You are a biological necessity. A filter. Nothing more. The world tilted on its axis, the taste of his kiss still lingering on my lips like a phantom poison. And for the first time in my 24 years of sheltered, invisible existence, I didn't want to cry. I wanted to scream until my throat bled. I had always been a ghost in my own life. In a world governed by the aggressive, heady dynamics of alphas and omegas, I was an anomaly, a 24-year-old unmarked omega who had never experienced a heat, never scented an alpha, and certainly never been kissed. My doctor called it dormant omega syndrome, a polite way of saying my body was too frightened of the world to participate in it. I was content with that. I worked in the sub-basement archives of Thorn Enterprises, surrounded by the smell of decaying paper and dust, far away from the pheromone-heavy boardrooms on the 50th floor. I was the archivist of forgotten things. I didn't expect to become one of them. It happened on a Tuesday, during a torrential downpour that rattled the pipes of the basement. The service elevator, which rarely moved, dinged. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the quiet stacks. I froze, clutching a stack of tax records from 1998 to my chest. The doors slid open, and the air pressure in the room instantly dropped. It wasn't just a presence. It was a physical weight, a crushing gravity that made my knees buckle. Cashin Thorne stumbled out. I knew his face from the magazines I archived. The CEO. The Ice King. The alpha who had doubled the conglomerate's net worth in 3 years through ruthless acquisition. But the man stumbling toward me wasn't the composed predator from the covers. His tie was loosened, his top button ripped away, and his skin was flushed a feverish, unhealthy crimson. He was in a rut, but not a normal one. This felt volatile, jagged, like a nuclear reactor melting down. "Get out," he rasped, bracing himself against a metal shelf. His eyes were glowing a terrifying, luminescent gold. "Leave." I should have run. Every instinct in my dormant body screamed at me to flee, to scramble up the emergency stairs and lock myself in the bathroom. But I couldn't move. It wasn't fear holding me in place. It was a sudden, piercing empathy. He wasn't just angry. He was in agony. "Mr. Thorne," I whispered, taking a hesitant step forward. I have a suppressant in the first aid kit." "Suppressants don't work," he roared, slamming his fist against the shelving unit. Files cascaded down around us like dead leaves. "It's a neurological overload. I need silence. His gaze snapped to me. For a second, the beast behind his eyes assessed me. He inhaled sharply, his nostrils flaring. "You have no scent," he murmured, his voice dropping to a predatory growl. He pushed off the shelf, stalking toward me. "Why do you have no scent?" I'm defective," I stammered, backing up until my spine hit the cold concrete wall. "Please, sir. You're not well." "Defective," he repeated, looming over me. He was massive, a wall of expensive wool and raw, terrifying power. But as he crowded my personal space, something strange happened. The crushing weight of his pheromones didn't choke me. Felt cool, like rain on hot asphalt. Cashin froze, his hands planting on the wall on either side of my head. He leaned down, burying his nose in the crook of my neck. I trembled, squeezing my eyes shut. This was it. The assault. The tragedy I had spent my life hiding from. "Quiet," he breathed against my skin. "It's so quiet around you, sir." He pulled back, staring at my face with a look of utter bewilderment. The gold in his eyes was dimming, replaced by a dark, stormy gray. The noise, the static in my head. When I'm near you, it stops. Then, without asking, without a prelude of romance or seduction, he crashed his lips against mine. It wasn't a kiss of love. It was a kiss of desperation. It was a drowning man inhaling air. My first kiss, the moment I had romanticized since I was a teenager, was rough, clumsy, and tasted of scotch and iron. I stiffened, my hands fluttering uselessly against his broad chest. But then, a jolt of electricity, pure and hot, arced from his mouth to mine. My dormant biology woke up. It wasn't a slow awakening. It was an explosion. A whimper tore from my throat, and my hands, instead of pushing him away, clawed into the fabric of his shirt. I opened to him, and he groaned, a low vibration that rattled my ribcage. For a minute, or perhaps an hour, we were fused together in that dusty basement. The storm outside nothing compared to the one igniting between us. When he finally pulled away, he looked stabilized. The flush was gone. His eyes were clear. He looked at me, really looked at me with an intensity that made my knees weak. "What is your name?" he asked, his thumb brushing my swollen lip. "Julian," I whispered. "Julian Vane." "Julian." He tested the name as if tasting it. "Come with me." That was how it began. Not with a date but with a command. I was moved from the basement to the 50th floor. I was given a desk outside his office. I was given clothes that cost more than my tuition. And every day at noon the blinds would close and Cashin would call me in. Sometimes we talked. Sometimes he just held me. And sometimes he kissed me until the world blurred. He was the cold alpha, notorious for his cruelty in business. But with me he was gentle. Possessive, yes, but careful. I fell hard and fast, tumbling into the abyss of first love with the reckless abandon of someone who had been starved of affection for a quarter of a century. I thought I was special. I thought I was his fated mate, the one soul capable of taming the beast. I was a fool. 3 months later I found the file. It was lying on his desk, left carelessly open while he was in a meeting. It was labeled Project Anchor. Curiosity is a curse. I flipped it open. Asterisk subject, Julian Vane. Status, Omega. Asterisk. Objective, pheromonal neutralization. Asterisk analysis. Subject possesses a rare genetic mutation. His pheromone signature acts as a vacuum, absorbing and neutralizing alpha neurological overload. Recommended usage, daily contact to prevent CEO's cognitive decline. Warning, subject is not a compatible mate. Biological utility only. Asterisk, I read the words 3 times. Biological utility only. The kiss, the promotion, the gentle touches. It wasn't affection. It was a prescription. He wasn't kissing me because he desired me. He was kissing me to take his medicine. The door clicked open. Cashin walked in, looking every inch the master of the universe. He smiled when he saw me. A rare, genuine smile that used to make my heart stutter. Now it just made me feel sick. "Julian," he said, loosening his tie. "I have a headache. Come here." I stood up, the file trembling in my hand. "No." The smile vanished. "Excuse me." I said no. I threw the file onto the desk. It slid across the mahogany surface, stopping inches from his hand. "I'm not your pill, Cashin. I'm not your filter." He looked at the file, then back at me. His expression didn't shift into guilt. It settled into that familiar, icy mask. The mask of the CEO. "You were snooping," he stated, his voice devoid of emotion. "I was looking for a stapler." I lied, my voice shaking. "Is it true? Was it all just for this? To stop your headaches?" Cashin sighed, walking around the desk to pour himself a drink. That was when he delivered the line that shattered me, the moment where the glass hit the floor. "You aren't my partner, Julian. You are a biological necessity." He took a sip of whiskey. "I have a multi-billion-dollar merger approaching. My condition, the ANO, makes me volatile. Clouds my judgment. You clear it. It is a symbiotic relationship. I give you a life of luxury. You give me clarity. Why are you making this emotional? Because you kissed me. I screamed, the sound tearing my throat. You made me feel. You made me feel seen. I'm 24, Cashin. I waited. I waited for someone to look at me and see me, not a tool, not a ghost. And you used that. I utilized a resource, he corrected coldly. And I paid you well for it. Don't act like a victim. You enjoyed it. I loved you, I whispered. The silence that followed was heavy. Cashin's hand tightened around his glass. For a split second, a crack appeared in his armor. A flicker of hesitation, of pain. But he sealed it shut instantly. Love is a chemical defect, he said. I don't indulge in it. Now sit down. We have work to do. I looked at him, this man I had worshipped, and I realized that the cold alpha hadn't melted. He had just been using me to keep himself frozen. No, I said, unpinning the security badge from my lapel. I placed it on the desk next to the file. Julian, his voice dropped, a warning growl vibrating in the air. Walk out that door and you don't come back. You go back to the basement. Or worse, you go back to being nothing. I'd rather be nothing than be a tool, I said. I turned and walked out. I expected him to stop me. I expected him to chase me, to grab my arm, to tell me he lied. But the only sound was the clinking of ice in a glass. I quit Thorn Enterprises the next day. I moved into a studio apartment the size of Cashin's walk-in closet. I got a job at a public library. I tried to forget the taste of whiskey and the feeling of gold eyes watching me. But the universe, cruel as it is, wasn't done with us. 2 weeks later, the news broke. Thorn Enterprises stock was plummeting. The merger had stalled. Rumors were swirling that Cashin Thorn had suffered a breakdown during a board meeting, that he had nearly attacked a shareholder. I tried to ignore it. I shelved books. I stamped cards. I went home and stared at the ceiling. Then came the rain. Another Tuesday storm. I was closing up the library, locking the back entrance, when a black sedan screeched to a halt at the curb. The door flew open. It wasn't a driver. It was Cashin. He looked ruined. The immaculate suit was gone, replaced by a wrinkled shirt and dark slacks. He hadn't shaved in days. He was soaked to the bone, rain plastering his dark hair to his forehead. But it was his smell that hit me first. Ozone, burnt sugar, and distress. Pure, unadulterated distress. He stumbled toward me, falling to his knees on the wet pavement. Cashin? I dropped my keys, rushing forward instinctively before stopping myself. What are you doing? It didn't work, he gasped, looking up at me. The gold in his eyes was fractured, swirling with madness. The others, I hired other nulls. I paid them. I touched them. It didn't work. Go to a hospital, I said, hardening my heart. I'm not your medicine. It wasn't the null gene, he choked out, crawling forward until he was at my feet. He looked up, rain mixing with something that looked suspiciously like tears on his face. I ran the tests again. The doctors, they said the effect wasn't biological. It wasn't genetic. He reached out, his hand trembling, hovering inches from my shoe. He didn't dare touch me. It was the bond, he whispered. It was the bond, Julian. My breath hitched. What bond? The mate bond, he confessed, his voice breaking. My body didn't calm down because you're a null. Calm down because you're mine. Because I'm yours. I didn't know. I swear to God, Julian, I didn't know. I thought I was incapable of it. I thought I was broken. You are broken, I said, my voice trembling. You broke me too. I know, he rasped. I know. And I am burning alive without you. Not because of the syndrome, but because I miss you. I miss your voice. I miss your quiet. I miss the way you look at me like I'm a man and not a monster. He bowed his head, his forehead resting on the wet asphalt. The great Cashin Thorn, the Ice King, kneeling in the mud before a librarian. I don't want you to be my filter, he said into the ground. I want you to be my husband. I will sign over half the company. I will burn the archives. I will do anything. Just, please, don't leave me in the noise. I looked down at him. I remembered the contract. I remembered the biological utility. But I also remembered the man who had held me during thunder, the man who had looked at me with wonder in the basement. The logic of the plot required a resolution. If he was truly just using me, he would have forced me back. He had the power to kidnap me, to coerce me. But he was kneeling. He was begging. It wasn't efficient. It wasn't calculated. It was human. I knelt down in the rain, ruining my cheap trousers. I reached out and lifted his chin. His skin was scorching hot. "You're an idiot, Cashin," I whispered. "I know," he breathed, leaning into my touch like a starving animal. "Half the company?" I asked. "All of it," he promised immediately. "Everything." "I don't want your company," I said softly. "I want the truth. Why did you kiss me that first day? Before you knew about the null gene? Before the tests?" Cashin closed his eyes. "Because you were the only beautiful thing I had ever seen in that hellhole." I let out a shaky breath. It wasn't a perfect answer. It didn't erase the hurt. But it was a start. I leaned in, closing the distance. "If you ever treat me like a medical prescription again, Cashin, I will leave you. And I won't come back. Do you understand?" "Yes," he swore. "Yes." I kissed him. It tasted of rain and redemption. And this time, when the electricity sparked, when the bond snapped into place like a steel cable binding our souls, I knew he felt it too. Not as a relief from pain, but as the terrifying, wonderful onset of love. The noise in his head silenced. But the pounding of our hearts was loud enough to drown out the storm. And that is how the archivist tamed the beast. If you enjoyed seeing Julian bring the CEO to his knees, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments, would you forgive a man who called you a biological utility, even if he groveled in the rain? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then.